When people hear the word rebuild, they usually think of a team with no direction, no talent, and no hope. But in today's NBA, rebuilding looks very different. Some teams already have elite young cores. Some are stockpiling draft picks, and others are rebuilding, whether they want to or not. So in this video, I'm breaking down every rebuilding NBA team, where they're at right now, what they're doing well, and what could go wrong. Let's start with Washington. The Wizards are one of the worst teams in the league record-wise, but honestly, they're in a really solid position long-term. They already have a good young core in Alex Sarr, Keyshawn George, Bilal Coulibaly, and Cam Whitmore, and that alone puts them ahead of a lot of rebuilding teams. Alex Sarr, who was taken second overall in the 2024 NBA Draft, has looked amazing so far in his sophomore season. He's averaging 18 points, 9 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game, and he already looks like the type of big you can build a defense around for the next decade. He's mobile, long, and actually impactful on both ends. Keyshawn George has also broken out for this Wizards team. Selected with the 24th pick in the 2024 draft, he's averaging a very solid 15 points per game, and that's incredible value for a late first-round pick. Bilal Coulibaly continues to develop as a defensive wing, and Cam Whitmore gives them real scoring upside. And with a 5-23 record at the time of recording, the Wizards are in a great position to land a top pick in the stacked 2026 NBA draft. Washington isn't close yet, but this is exactly how a rebuild is supposed to look. Brooklyn Nets. The Nets are one of the more interesting rebuilding teams in the league because of how fast everything changed. After trying to build a super team with Kevin Durant, Kyrie Irving, and James Harden, they completely pivoted and embraced a rebuild. Last offseason, they traded Cameron Johnson for Michael Porter Jr. and a 2032 first-round pick, and this trade has turned out to be an absolute steal for Brooklyn. Porter Jr. has been playing really well, averaging just under 26 points per game this season and rebuilding his value in a big way. Brooklyn also drafted Igor Demon with the 8th pick. And while he hasn't been incredible, he's looked fine for a rookie. He's averaging over 9 points per game in just 23 minutes, and there's still plenty of room for growth. Another rookie who's looked really good is Danny Wolf, drafted 27th overall in 2025, who already looks like a steal, averaging nearly 8 points in 18 minutes a night. The biggest thing with Brooklyn is flexibility. They own multiple first-round picks in every draft up until 2028, and they could easily add more by trading Michael Porter Jr., which they will most likely do. This team could very quickly turn into one of the best young cores in the league if they play this right. Portland Trailblazers. Just like the last two teams, the Trailblazers have a great young core, but they're actually farther into their rebuild than most teams. They already have 2 legitimate young scorers in Denny Avdija and Shaedon Sharpe. Avdija has been incredible, averaging 25 points, 7 assists, and 7 rebounds per game, while Sharpe is averaging 22 points a night at just 22 years old. That's a real offensive foundation. On top of that, Portland has young pieces like Donovan Clingan, Toumani Camara, and Yang Hansen, all of whom fit nicely into a long-term plan. This is one of those rebuilds where you can actually see the end goal. The main negative is that Portland doesn't own their first-round pick in the upcoming draft or in 2028, which could hurt their rebuild a bit. But overall, this team still has a very bright future and is closer than people think. Utah Jazz. The Jazz are in a really interesting spot because they already have a star in Lauri Markkanen, but they're clearly not ready to compete. Lauri is a massive trade candidate heading into the deadline because he's wasting his prime on a bad Jazz team. If Utah does trade him, they'll most likely get a solid haul, and without him, they'll lose more games, which means better draft odds. Keontae George has taken a big leap this season, averaging 24 points per game, and he looks much more comfortable as the secondary scorer for the team. Walker Kessler has been injured for most of the year, but when healthy, he's still a very strong young center for Utah's future. They also own a 2027 Lakers first-round pick that's top 4 protected, which could end up being very valuable. If the Jazz make the right decisions, they're absolutely capable of contending again in a few years. Charlotte Hornets. The Hornets are facing one of the biggest decisions of any rebuilding team. With Con Knoopel looking as good as he has, the Hornets are probably seriously questioning whether LaMelo Ball is actually the franchise player they hoped he would be. If they decide he's not, then a LaMelo trade could very realistically happen this season. The most likely path for Charlotte is moving on from LaMelo and fully building around Con Knoopel. It's risky, but staying stuck in the middle hasn't worked for this franchise, and a real rebuild might finally give them direction. Along with Knoopel, the Hornets have good young pieces in Brandon Miller and Ryan Kalkbrenner. Milwaukee Bucks. The Bucks are in one of the strangest rebuilding situations in the NBA because they don't even want to rebuild, but they might be forced to. It's very apparent that Giannis Antetokounmpo wants out of Milwaukee. Since winning the finals, the Bucks haven't made a serious playoff run, and Giannis clearly wants another chance to compete at the highest level. Milwaukee wants a king's ransom for Giannis, And rightfully so, because he's one of the best players of his generation. The problem is that in today's NBA, teams are hesitant to give up massive asset packages, which puts the Bucks in a terrible spot. They have almost no young talent outside of maybe Ryan Rollins, so if they do trade Giannis, they absolutely have to get a massive haul. If they don't, this could turn into one of the ugliest rebuilds in the league. New Orleans Pelicans. The Pelicans were heavily criticized for the Derek Queen trade, and for good reason. They traded an unprotected future first to move up to the 13th pick, and considering how bad they are, that pick could easily turn into a top 5 selection. That said, Derek Queen actually looks elite so far, and Jeremiah Fears has also looked really good as a rookie. So while the process was questionable, the talent is real. New Orleans is also clearly moving on from Zion Williamson, and they're not going to get much for him. At best, it's expiring contracts and maybe a second-round pick. But they do have intriguing young players in Trey Murphy III, who is averaging 20 points a night while being one of the better defenders in the league. This rebuild is messy, but there's still something here. Chicago Bulls. The Bulls are at a crossroads once again. At this trade deadline, they have to decide whether they're finally committing to a rebuild or continuing the mediocrity they've lived in for the last 6 or 7 years. If they commit, the first move should be trading players like Kobe White and Nikola Vucevic, who could bring back real value from contenders. Chicago has some intriguing young players. Matas Buzelis is averaging 14 points per game in his second year, and rookie Noah Essengwe, while injured, is still a long-term piece. The biggest surprise has been Josh Giddey, who has easily been the Bulls' best player this season. He's just 23 years old and averaging nearly 20 points, 9 rebounds, and 9 assists per game. And he's locked into a great contract at $25 million per year until 2029. If Chicago actually commits to this rebuild, they might finally escape NBA purgatory. If you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe. We are trying to get to 500 subscribers, and you subscribing helps out a lot.